A black man tried to enter his own airport, but a white woman stopped him, demanding proof he belonged. What happened next will shock you, as she wished she'd stayed silent. At JFK International Airport, Terminal 5, early morning. The rhythmic echo of leather soles against polished marble filled the terminal, smooth and deliberate like a metronome. Travelers rushed past in a blur of rolling suitcases and caffeine-fueled impatience, but one man walked with quiet certainty. Julian Knight. Tailored charcoal suit, subtle pinstripe, and handcrafted Italian loafers. No jewelry except a platinum watch, subtle, but serious. He held his boarding pass in one hand, a sleek black carry-on in the other. His gate was still 40 minutes away, but this wasn't about boarding. It was about belonging, or rather, what people thought belonging should look like. Up ahead stood the entrance to the Archer Sky Lounge, the flagship luxury lounge for Horizon Air's top-tier flyers. Frosted glass, chrome accents, soft jazz floating through the air. A sanctuary for the rich, the connected, and the properly dressed. Or so the signage implied. Julian approached with calm assurance, his eyes briefly scanning the art on the lounge walls. He had commissioned it 6 months ago. Behind the reception podium stood Sandra Welsh. Early 40s. Bleached blonde bob, scarlet lipstick, and a smile so tight it might cut glass. She glanced up from her monitor, and the smile vanished. She didn't recognize him. But that wasn't unusual. He rarely put his name or face in headlines. That was intentional. Sandra's brows drew together. "Excuse me, sir, this area is for Archer Sky Lounge members only," she said, with the rehearsed tone of polite dismissal. "Corporate guests, premium ticket holders, and VIP frequent flyers." Julian offered a quiet nod and handed over his invitation, embossed with silver lettering and his name printed in bold, Julian E. Knight. "I'm aware," he said simply. Sandra glanced at the pass, then looked at him, then back at the pass. Her lips thinned. "I'm going to need to see your first-class ticket." Julian reached calmly into his jacket and handed it to her without a word. Still, she hesitated. Her eyes drifted to the people behind Julian, 2 older white businessmen, one already frowning in mild annoyance, the other whispering something under his breath. Sandra gave a tense smile. "This will just take a moment." Julian didn't flinch. He stood there, poised and quiet, like a man waiting for a door he already owned to be opened. Behind him, the air buzzed with discomfort. Not from him, but from the assumptions pressing in all around. Archer Sky Lounge, JFK International. Sandra tapped a few keys on the lounge computer, lips pursed tightly. The system beeped once, approval chime. The name Julian Knight lit up, not just as a first-class ticket holder, but flagged with a rare designation, Titanium Executive Circle. The highest possible status. Still, her gaze remained wary. "That's quite a status," she muttered, feigning a polite chuckle. "Is this your first time flying Horizon Air?" Julian tilted his head slightly. The question was benign on the surface. But it wasn't the first time he'd heard something like it. Not from people like her. "No," he replied evenly. "I've been with Horizon longer than this lounge has existed." That part was literal truth. Sandra's smile faltered, but she didn't back down. She glanced again at his clothes, as if looking for something wrong, a missed detail that would justify her unease. His shoes? Impeccable. His grooming? Flawless. But her discomfort had nothing to do with wardrobe. It was about the man wearing it. Behind Julian, the line grew. One of the businessmen spoke up. "Can we get a move on here?" Sandra's voice rose slightly. "Just making sure everything's in order, sir." She turned back to Julian, her tone more clipped now. "I'm going to ask you to wait outside while I verify a few things with management. Lounge access at this tier requires executive pre-clearance." Julian's expression didn't change, but the air around him did. Subtle tension radiated from the way his jaw shifted ever so slightly. He extended his hand, calmly asking for his documents back. Sandra blinked. "Excuse me. I'd like my ticket and invitation back." "I'm not finished." "Yes, You are. The voice behind him grew louder now, other travelers watching, murmuring. Julian leaned forward slightly, voice low, measured. You don't know who I am. And that's fine. But what you've done, twice now, is make assumptions that have nothing to do with policy. And everything to do with perception. She flushed red. I'm going to give you a chance to correct that, Julian added, before someone else does it for you. A man in a navy blue suit walked briskly from the lounge's private corridor. His name badge read Aaron Templeton, lounge director. He stopped cold when he saw Julian. Mr. Knight, he gasped. Sandra turned. You know him? Templeton's eyes went wide. He's the Julian Knight. Julian calmly interjected. Not the. Just Julian. Sandra's voice cracked. Wait, you mean his with the airline? Julian finally offered a tight smile. Let's just say I'm invested. Templeton stepped forward, almost flustered. Sir, please, come in. The private wing is prepped. They've been expecting you. Behind Sandra, her hands trembled slightly. She looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor. Julian turned to her one last time. I wasn't trying to cause a scene, he said, voice steady, but sharp. But don't mistake politeness for permission. Then he stepped inside, leaving her standing at the gate she thought she controlled. Private Executive Wing, Archer Sky Lounge. Julian stepped into the velvet-trimmed corridor of the Private Executive Lounge, where only a handful of people in the world were allowed to walk without escort. It was a quiet, serene world. Glass doors, modern art, imported cedar walls, and a soft hum of jazz playing through the hidden speakers. Aaron Templeton stayed a step behind him, practically tripping over his apologies. We had no idea, if I'd been up front, this never would have happened. Sandra's new, still learning protocol, and Julian held up a hand. Let's not make excuses. Aaron nodded quickly, his mouth shutting like a snapped briefcase. A hostess appeared, offering a chilled towel and a glass of still water. Julian thanked her and took a seat in one of the reserved booths, leather-lined, deeply private. Across from him was a digital wall showing an interactive dashboard of the airline's top investors. Julian Knight's name floated at the top. J. Knight Capital Partners, 22.7% controlling interest, Class A preferred stock. He stared at it for a moment, then turned to Aaron. Tell me something, Aaron. What do you think this place is supposed to represent? Aaron hesitated. Excellence. Service. Premium care. Julian nodded. And access, right? Equal access, for those who earn it. Yes, sir. Julian leaned back. Then explain to me how I, wearing a tailored Tom Ford suit, flying first class, carrying top-tier credentials, and walking in here as the single largest private investor in Horizon Air, was treated like a trespasser. Aaron swallowed hard. There's no explanation, sir. There's only accountability. Good answer. Julian stood. Because here's what I want. I want to speak to Sandra again. Not to humiliate her, not to shout. I want her to learn, because if she doesn't, she'll do it to the next person. Maybe someone without the voice or leverage I have. Aaron nodded. Understood. I'll call her in. 10 minutes later. Sandra entered the private wing like someone heading into a sentencing. She looked paler, her professional mask now cracked and fragile. She clutched her hands in front of her and avoided Julian's gaze. Aaron remained in the background. Julian gestured to the seat across from him. Sit. She obeyed. There was a long silence. Then Julian spoke, his voice calm. You know what your mistake was. She didn't respond. You thought the suit didn't match the skin, he said. You didn't say it. But you didn't have to. Every pause, every double check, every backhanded question. It's the same script I've heard 100 times. And I'm tired of it. Her lip trembled. I didn't mean to disrespect. But you did, he said, not raising his voice. And here's what's worse. You could have just apologized when I gave you the chance. But you doubled down. You wanted me to prove myself. You made me small in front of a crowd because your perception didn't line up with reality. She blinked, her voice barely audible. I didn't know who you were. That's the point, Julian replied sharply. You shouldn't have to know. Respect shouldn't be reserved for people with power. That landed. He leaned forward. I don't need you to grovel. I need you to change. Sandra finally looked him in the eye. I'm sorry. For real. I let my assumptions lead me, and I disrespected you. I'll own that. Julian studied her. Then, with a subtle nod, he rose. Aaron stepped forward. Mr. Knight, I can place her on immediate leave. No, Julian cut in. You're going to enroll her in Horizon's executive DEI training. Not the canned HR junk, the real course we funded last year. 2 weeks. Full attendance. Final report. Sandra looked stunned, but also relieved. Julian turned back to her. Earn your redemption. Don't just say the right words. Be the change next time. And with that, he walked away, back through the private corridor, heading toward his gate. Gate A7, 12 minutes before boarding. Julian reached his gate with time to spare. He stood by the window, gazing across the tarmac, arms folded loosely as the sun dipped behind a Boeing 787 bearing the Horizon Air livery. His airline, in more ways than one. He didn't need attention. But attention had found him. Several passengers who had witnessed the confrontation earlier were huddled together, whispering and scrolling their phones. Others stared outright. A teenager discreetly took a photo and darted behind her mother. Julian sighed. He'd long mastered the art of being visible without being available. But sometimes, the moment chose you. His phone buzzed. Text from Danielle, Communications Director. We've got a situation. The lounge incident is trending. Some blogger recognized you. Someone else caught part of it on video. Want us to handle it? Another buzz. Twitter post by @Airline Justice Watch. A well-dressed black man was just publicly humiliated at the Horizon Air Lounge. Denied entry by a white staffer, despite his ticket. Guess what? He owns part of the airline. #Airport Lounge Showdown. The video showed Julian remaining calm while Sandra grilled him. Her defensive posture. His quiet dignity. And that final moment, where he pulled out his investor card. It already had 48,000 views and climbing fast. Julian smiled slightly and texted Danielle back. Let it breathe. No statement yet. He turned and headed to board the plane. First-class cabin, 38,000 feet above ground. The seat was plush. The lighting, dimmed. A glass of sparkling water in hand. But Julian wasn't watching movies or reading financial forecasts. He was reading the comments. At Think Law First. This happens every day to professionals of color. Difference is, Mr. Knight had the receipts and the power. Respect him. At Aisha said it. Reminder, your biases don't care how educated, wealthy, or dignified someone is. They'll still show up unless you do the work. At Fly High Horizon, official airline account. We are aware of the incident at Archer Sky Lounge. We are reviewing internal procedures to ensure our core values of dignity, respect, and equity are upheld at all levels. Thank you to our community for holding us accountable. Aaron texted again. Our board just got wind. Chairman wants to know if you'll speak with him directly. Julian replied. Happy to. After I land. He reclined his seat. Closed his eyes. For a brief moment, he allowed himself the rarest of luxuries. Peace. But this wasn't over. This wasn't just about one lounge. One woman. One incident. This was about every unspoken wall that still stood, built from assumptions and enforced by gatekeepers too blind to see past their own reflection. And Julian Knight? He was done asking to be let in. Now, he was building new doors, and deciding who gets to walk through. Horizon Air Headquarters, Executive Boardroom, New York City. The boardroom smelled of espresso, polished wood, and tension. Julian sat at the far end of the table. No longer the quiet investor behind the curtain. Today, he was very much center stage. wearing another sharp navy suit, no tie this time, but with presence that commanded the room. Around him sat the airline's top brass, Chairman Harold Greaves, COO Margot Lynn, Legal Chief Daniel Worth, and a few regional VPs dialing in via conference screens. The CEO, Victor Lang, had joined via secure line from Dubai. No one asked Julian for proof of his identity this time. The video from Archer Lounge had now passed 8 million views. National morning shows had dissected it. Civil rights organizations had used it as a rallying point. And internally, Horizon Air had received over 3,000 formal complaints about implicit bias, ranging from check-in counters to corporate promotions. The company was exposed. And Julian had become its reluctant mirror. Greaves leaned forward. Julian, we've reviewed the footage. I personally spoke with Sandra. She's been placed on unpaid leave. But this has legs: media, stockholders, advocacy groups. Julian didn't flinch. This isn't a PR leak. This is a structural rot. You don't fix rot with spin, you replace the beams. Greaves cleared his throat. What are you proposing? Julian reached into his briefcase, slid across a thin folder labeled Equity Directive, Night Proposal 01. Margot Lynn opened it. Hiring audits. Blind review procedures. Equity training for every lounge, gate, and corporate division. Julian nodded. And a new oversight division. With teeth. I'm nominating 3 people to lead it, 2 of whom are external. Greaves shifted uncomfortably. You're asking us to restructure internal power. Julian leaned in. Calm, unwavering. No. I'm telling you. As the controlling stakeholder, I'm enacting these changes. Silence. Victor Lang's voice crackled from the screen. Julian, do you plan to make this public? Julian looked around the room. If you support the changes, the story becomes one of redemption. If you resist, it becomes a case study in corporate cowardice. Your call. No one spoke. Then Margot Lynn, an Asian American executive who had once been the only one in the room herself, closed the folder slowly. I support it, she said. Daniel Worth nodded. Same here. Greaves sighed. All right, let's do it. 1 month later. The sign above the door was the same. But inside, everything had changed. The staff had gone through mandatory equity and empathy training. A new assistant manager, a young Nigerian-American woman named Lola, now led the team. And a plaque had been installed near the entry. This space was made possible by the vision and investment of Julian Knight. A place of rest and dignity for everyone. Sandra Carter never returned to work. Rumor was, she filed a complaint and later issued a public apology. Julian never responded publicly. He didn't need to. At the lounge entrance, Julian passed through the now familiar security checkpoint. As he approached the lounge, Lola stepped forward with a smile. Mr. Knight, she said warmly. Welcome back. He nodded. Thank you, Lola. Your usual seat by the window's ready. And the ginger tea you like. Julian smiled. Perfect. He stepped into the lounge. The door didn't just open this time. It welcomed him. But more importantly, it would welcome everyone who followed.